All right, let's jump into the weekly channeled angel message and see what the angels have for us today. Take a moment, be silent, go inward, see where they want to start. So the image is of cracking an egg and then dropping it into a frying pan. You can see what that's about. Okay, so the cracking of the egg is about like cracking us open in terms of like spiritually, emotionally, having a spiritual awakening. And why? Okay, so they're focusing on like when the egg first goes into the pan, if you think about like that's hot, right? It's uncomfortable, things are sizzling. This idea of like when we have a spiritual awakening or a life awakening, any type of awakening to like a moment where we feel like the curtains are drawn back and we're seeing something very clearly in our life, like for the very first time or on a deeper level. And it's a lot at first. And it can be uncomfortable. And I think of what the angels are showing me, like in the egg is like a little cocoon, like the egg's sitting in there, the yolk is sitting in there, and that feels safe. And it has the shell to protect it. And so maybe for a while in our life, we've been living a life where even if we're uncomfortable, it feels like we know what to expect, and there's some comfort level to that. And we've kept ourselves safe by not like having these awakenings and these truths. But then at some point, we're going to be cracked open. And if we think of this egg as like something else is cracking it open, like us as a human is taking this egg and cracking it. The egg's not deciding to do that. And that's kind of what happens when we have some type of awakening moment, is something outside of us cracks us open and leads to this awakening. And so it can be jarring going out of that cocoon and into the frying pan. Let me see about like if there's anything about the frying experience or just the cooking experience. So they're showing me how like you can make eggs in a lot of different forms, right? Like scrambled, over easy, all that kind of stuff, sunny side up. Just like when we have awakening moments, we can handle that in a lot of different ways, and that can shape us into a lot of different ways. But that we have choice in that, right? When someone takes your egg order, they're usually like, how do you like your eggs? You get to choose how you want your eggs to be cooked. So kind of similarly, like when we have an awakening moment and we're going through a healing process and a transformation, we have some control and some choice into what does that look like and how we're going to handle that. And that's really, really important for the angels to remind us, because I think sometimes we give so much power to a higher power, to like destiny and fate, and that we don't feel like we have a choice, but we do. We do get to have choices in how we forge our own path and how we make light of or use these experiences, however hard they may be. It's important to remember that we have these choices. See if there's anything else about this message that the angels want to share. Okay, now they're showing like eating of the eggs. And apologize for anyone that's vegan out there. But people who eat eggs and enjoy eggs, there can be an enjoyable experience of that eating process once it's done. Like that's going to be more enjoyable than like the raw egg for most people, and the half-cooked part. And even like can be dangerous is what they're saying, to have some raw eggs or not fully cooked eggs. But then the final process where it's fully cooked and ready to be served, that can be enjoyable. And also you can add all sorts of stuff to it. This idea of like why they're bringing this up is like our healing journey, while it's uncomfortable, if we stop it at any point too soon, it's not going to be as enjoyable. It's still going to be uncomfortable. We haven't fully healed. We want to get to a point in our healing process where it's never actually done, but it feels like we've gotten to the other side of something. And that can make life so much more enjoyable, because now we've changed these patterns. We're this new person. We're engaging in life in a new way. And that can actually really serve us in really positive ways. And that can be enjoyable depending on how we look at it. Meaning like depending on how we make our eggs, right? We can add cheese, we can add vegetables, bacon, whatever, right? We can add that stuff and that makes it more enjoyable. So depending on how we see our healing journey, how we embrace that new part of us in our life and how it's changed, that will change the way in terms of how we enjoy this healing process and what we've gotten to, this new way of being. If we fight it too much, it's going to be really, really hard to get to the other side where life, like, you feel like you can finally breathe again. If anyone has been through that process, right? It's like a cyclical process of death and rebirth where something happens or life gets shaken up and it's really jarring and it's really uncomfortable. And it can even be really dark, like the dark night of the soul, and really uncomfortable. And then as we do our healing work and we keep working through it and we don't, give up or go back to our old ways, but we keep working through it, we get to the other side and there's a rebirth and it feels like we can breathe again, and that feels really good. Now, we'll go through many of those cycles, right? So that's where the healing process is never done. But it's really about how we embrace the journey, how we handle the journey, and our perspective about it. And that we feel like it's worth it is what I'm hearing from the angels. We really have to believe that that process feels worth it. Otherwise, we're going to want to give up. It's not going to be worth the pain or discomfort to get through. We have to see that the other side, whatever is waiting for us on the other side of this process, feels worth it to us. And if it's the first time that you've ever gone through that process, you might be really wondering, is it worth it? I hear that all the time with clients in therapy and coaching spaces. So, well, what if I work through this stuff and then I don't like what's on the other side? I don't like who I am, or my life changes, or I lose relationships. And that is a really big if. But the angels are reminding us that, like, whatever, if you do the process, whatever's waiting for you on the other side is meant for you. Even if it means losing a part, losing relationships or changing a part of yourself, that is meant for your path. And it's okay to grieve that or feel however you feel about that. But it's aligned on your path if you do the work. If you've been to the process, you might already know it is worth it to get to the other side of whatever that cycle that you're going through is, but stick with it. It definitely is worth it. Let me see if there's anything else here. Nope. Saying that's good to go. So feel free to share wherever you are in that death rebirth cycle. If you've had a spiritual awakening or some type of awakening to some truth about you or your life or relationships or your family or your growing up experience, feel free to share that in the comments and where you're at and how you're managing that journey. And I wish you the best in that process. If you'd like support in that, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to talk about how I can support you with that.